the Global Energy Leaders Podcast, episode 13.
Welcome to the Global Energy Leaders Podcast, powered by R Squared Global.
Welcome to the Global Energy Leaders Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Ray, and thank you so much for tuning in. If you're like me and you watch a lot of movies, you may have seen Die Hard, was it 4? I don't know. There's so many, it's hard to keep up with. And you know the plot. They go out and they're trying to blow up the power plant and shut down the grid and insert random hero movie here, and you've seen the plot. Is that a real threat, though? That's the question. We bring on Rabih Dabboussi from DarkMatter to help us answer these questions and really pin down where is the threat. But before we get to this, I've got to tell you guys about the story, what happened. I'm actually recording this, and we recorded the interview on January 16th. So about a month before this podcast is released. And so it's going great. You might remember from a few episodes back, I had a head cold, and I kind of powered through it. Well, okay, on this episode, I am doing the interview, and the interview is going great. And Rabih, he's answering the questions and bringing the quality that you guys need. And he stopped, and he goes, "Are you okay, Ryan?" And for some reason, my microphone was not muted. And so poor Rabih was just a trooper to deal with that, because I was coughing the whole interview. You don't really hear it on the audio at all, but it's there on his end. And so he's answering these questions while I'm just coughing up a lung through parts of this interview in the background. So Rabih, thank you so much. It was completely embarrassing for me, obviously, because I thought I had muted the thing on my end. And just thank you for persevering and dealing with all the problems. We're going to link to his information in the show notes. And he mentions a few conferences that they're attending, and those are coming up. So we're going to link to those in the show notes as well. And so don't forget that while they will be in San Francisco, I am getting ready to head down to South Africa. That's just a few weeks away, and I will be at the Sarwa Educational Event. And so check out the show notes. I'll put the information there. And so as we get ready to get to the interview, just a reminder, this is about energy security. And, as this world gets more and more interconnected, that means there's more opportunities for people to hack what we're doing. And so Rabih does a great job of explaining what the potential is, where the threats are at. And if you're in the energy business and you work for even a startup, you're doing a tech startup, you need to consider some of the stuff he talks about here, because this is a problem not just for the oil and gas companies or the solar companies or whomever. This is a problem for everyone in the industry that has some kind of interconnectivity that could impact larger portions of the industry. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Rabih. Rabih, it's great to finally get you on the podcast. How's it going today?
It's going great. Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, so we've all seen the movie where hackers get in and they infiltrate a power company or a gas company or oil company, and they do all this damage to the grid, and people are without power. It takes some superhero to come and, to save the day. Is that what DarkMatter is about, or is that what you're here for, to kind of prevent those mass threats?
Well, we started because of that and many other things, Ryan. So DarkMatter is a cybersecurity firm established with the objectives to protect our future through protecting its technologies. And obviously, power grids and oil and gas and energy sector, based on where we are headquartered, is a very important industrial pillar and economic pillar in the region. In addition to the need to secure those grids and to secure that infrastructure, we aspire to become a security advisor and a protector of governments and nations and enterprises. So, yes, indeed, to a certain degree, this is why we started, but the mission is a lot bigger than just protecting the grids of the future.
Okay, great. Now that actually goes to my next question. What are the nature of cyber threats for energy companies?
That's a very good question, actually. And I'd like to start by just highlighting the fact that it's not just about energy companies. It's actually about every government, every city, every country, every company, every home, and every individual are becoming so much more digitized and connected. And with that connectivity, there's a tremendous amount of value. Obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be spending billions and billions of dollars on the technology infrastructure, both hardware and software. However, at the same time, connectivity brings with it the risk of being breached, the risk of being attacked, the risk of being hacked, the risk of the information being hijacked or stolen, and the risk of some of the transactions being done in a malicious manner, such as somebody hacking into your bank account and transferring money into theirs. For the energy sector specifically, what's been happening in the last few years is a tremendous amount of pressure, economic pressure, on the price of oil, the price of energy, the price of delivering oil and energy. And those companies have turned towards technology to bring efficiency and productivity into the whole lifeline of their products and services. With that digitization, they actually started converging their what we call industrial control systems, which used to be totally separated and segregated from the internet and the information technology networks that they have. And to bring those efficiencies, and because the new technologies are based on internet protocol, there has been a trend of convergence that we've witnessed over the last few years in energy and oil and gas sector. Now, we've witnessed similar convergence about 15 to 20 years ago when the telecom industry was going through this optimization and digitization and modernization of their infrastructure, where they moved from a completely separate and proprietary time division multiplex network or circuit switch network onto an internet-based network, packet-based network. So today what we have is a fully converged telecom and mobile networks. And the same thing is happening in the energy industry, where those proprietary and somewhat separated industrial control systems that are provided by the major vendors of industrial systems, whether it's the valves or the delivery grid or the controls or the switches of those energy infrastructures, they're now being digitized and connected to what you may call the internet, but it's actually an intranet. It's IP-based infrastructure. That opens up a tremendous amount of vulnerability, because it is so much easier to hack into an environment that is connected to an internet protocol network versus a completely separate and proprietary environment. In addition to this, the introduction of Internet of Things, where sensors and devices and valves and lights and everything around us is becoming connected and digitized. Each and every one of those sensors and devices has an IP address, and ultimately and virtually, you could say, is hackable. We've recently witnessed, actually, in the U.S., a massive outage of the DNS services for the East Coast of the U.S. And that outage was actually caused by leveraging the CCTV cameras to start sending out domain name server requests, DNS requests, to a DNS service, which basically knocked out internet services for the East Coast of the U.S. for numerous hours, and in some cases for days. So you could think of the modernization of those grids as we migrate towards smart grid as something of value, which is true. But at the same time, if it's done without a security measure that is taking place, then you're actually opening yourself up for a lot of risks. And exactly over a year ago, actually, November or December of 2015, we witnessed an attack on the electrical grid system of the Ukraine, where over 220,000 buildings were knocked off of power for multiple hours. Now, this was done through state actors and fairly well organized and capable malicious organization. But at the same time, anybody could automate such attack, and potentially a single individual or even a computer could do this damage.
Okay, I want to follow up real quick there because you broke down and you said that there's, we normally think of it as the internet, but there's the intranet. And so they're both hackable. What's kind of the difference and why should we be focusing on hearing these terms when we think of energy security?
Yeah, I mean, there is a difference. Obviously, when you have your own private network, it's typically protected by a lot of security measures. In the past, those security measures were mainly perimeter security. We've all heard of firewalls and gateways and security implementation on your internet gateway, a demilitarized zone with some services sitting in between your firewall and your internal network, and so on. However, that model has now changed, and it's changed because applications have now evolved into cloud-based applications, highly distributed. There has been a lot of embedding of software onto the devices and onto the systems at the edge. So it's very, very difficult now to control what's inside your network versus what's outside your network. And the security parameters and the security architecture of the future will become highly scalable and highly distributed and really horizontal. So security has to become advanced in a way that you can detect the use of applications, the performance and behaviors of applications and devices, not just identify the in and out of the traffic of those applications. So yes, indeed, there's a difference. However, I think the difference is becoming very little between internet and intranet because a lot of your applications now rely heavily on leveraging cloud services for many reasons. The first one is to gain optimization and cost efficiency, but the second reason is to make sure that you are provided a service from a vendor or a service provider whose bread and butter to provide that service. So you basically go and request that from the experts, and requesting that from the experts and many times requires you to cross the internet to gain that service. Now, there are a lot of companies out there that claim that they do have an understanding of securing ICS systems, and so on, and that's a good thing. However, the problem is today there's no standard way of securing it. So the traditional kind of IT security companies have chosen to go down the path by encapsulating and tunneling ICS traffic onto a VPN or a secure internet protocol connection. In my opinion, and in our opinion at DarkMatter, this is not sufficient because even if you secure that traffic, the traffic within the secure tunnel could be actually hacked, and there could be some breach that is going across that tunnel. So what you need to do is build intelligence into your security applications and security gateways that not only secures the traffic, but also analyzes and interprets the traffic and understands when there's a shutdown message to a power substation, then this is the shutdown message. When there's multiple of those, then there's an anomaly. And when there's an anomaly, you need to take action, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so I want to transition just a little bit here, and we kind of talked about the movie analogy to kind of get us started. Walk us through what is kind of the worst case threat for a hack to an energy company. What would be the worst case? And then what's more practical things that we're seeing, that you guys are seeing at least on a daily or more regular basis where these hackers are trying to get? So just kind of give us the spectrum there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So let's look at potential grid attacks. So, as we deliver electricity, we're going to look at potential efficiencies in leveraging connected devices and Internet of Things to be able to not just sense, but also control and manage. So if your lights within the city become all digitized and smart, you could potentially save millions and millions of dollars a day in energy by making sure there is a right ambient light that is implemented. The lights come on at the right time, go off at the right time. They may potentially go off when there's nobody and there's no cars in the streets, and so on. So one of the scenarios here is for somebody to take complete control over this lighting system and start turning on and off the power, not just for the light in the streets, but for buildings. So imagine if you're in a hospital, you have operations taking place, you have babies being delivered, you have people's life and death scenario. And yes, hospitals have backup systems, but those backup systems could be hacked as well. So knocking out the power grid and turning it off could cause a tremendous amount of economic, social, and human damage. And that would be one of the worst case scenarios. Another scenario is if you look at the transportation systems that we have in most of the urban areas, in most of the cities today, the street lights and the cars are becoming connected. The way you manage the traffic and control the flow of the traffic is becoming digitized and automated. And if somebody breaches those systems that control the traffic lights, that controls ultimately the autonomous vehicles that we have in the city, and controls the way we manage the traffic in the city, they could not just bring the city to a halt, they could also use the autonomous vehicles as trajectories, as projectiles, as weapons. They could also turn all the lights green onto a major intersection, causing chaos and accidents, and they could ultimately bring the whole city to a halt from a traffic perspective. So these are just a few scenarios that could take place, and I believe that 2017, the next 2 to 3 years, we will see attacks of such size and such impact, because we simply are in a race of digitizing. And in a lot of cases, we're taking the right measures. That's why we're not seeing this happen everywhere. But for many organizations, they are laggers behind in their understanding of how to secure this next generation infrastructure. And they're also not investing in the right skill sets that can come and help them. And again, in another way, this is what DarkMatter does. Our mission is to bring in global expertise to offer services with clear understanding of where the risks are and what the solution is, but also to start looking at the problems of the future. So we know that today there's a computing power that is available to crack passwords, to attempt denial of service attacks, to potentially encrypt a location in a data center for ransomware, and so on. Now, in a lot of cases, there is offense and defense in cyber attacks, and these leverage typically a hyper-converged compute infrastructure. In the near future, we will have quantum computing. And when quantum computing becomes available, you will have the ability to crack passwords within milliseconds and seconds of millions and millions of user accounts. You'll be able to do so much more compute through the leverage of quantum computing. So who's thinking of securing and providing defense against quantum hacks? Well, we're one of the companies. I think there's a lot of advanced research right now in academia. We are looking at quantum-proof cryptography, for example, where if you implement your crypto libraries, your crypto algorithms, they're not only resilient against traditional computing systems, but they're also quantum proof for the quantum computers that will become available in the next few years. That's an example of an innovation that we're focusing on, and an example of research that we're focusing on.
We'll get back to Rabih in just a second, but first, let's hear from our sponsor.
For over 20 years, R Squared Global has served the energy and infrastructure industries. With offices in Texas, Alabama, and Louisiana, R Squared Global offers engineering, survey, right-of-way, and GIS solutions. For more information, please visit www.gor2.com.
And now back to our interview on energy security. And there's no doubt that you are some of the leaders in this industry. And so let me just ask you this. Okay, I don't want you guys to give away all your secret sauce. So we've got listeners from all over the world, and they're hearing this stuff like, oh my gosh, the threat's real. We've got to do something. What would be yours and DarkMatter's recommendation, just as a starting point, just the first thing for energy professionals to do that are working for oil companies, gas companies, power companies? What would be the first thing you would say, hey, if you're working for a company, this is kind of the first thing that you need to do to begin to protect yourself?
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast, you're either a person who's responsible for industrial control systems, responsible for the delivery of services in an energy company, or you're an IT professional or a cybersecurity professional. So you belong to either of these organizations. Our advice to you is to first understand what your security posture is. Where do you stand today in your systems, in your policies, in the way you do work, in the way you deliver your services? Where do you stand from a security posture perspective? Are you vulnerable? And if you are vulnerable, what are you vulnerable to? And our advice is assume a state of breach. Everybody out there is hacked. They just don't know that they have been hacked. And whether that hack is significant enough for you to feel it or not, that's debatable. So what you need to do is really understand your security posture. And then once you have that understanding, start mapping your business strategy. Where are your expansion strategy? Where's your expansion strategy taking you? Where are you heading? What type of services, what type of products are you going to offer in the future? And what is your digitization strategy, and how are you planning to secure the digital infrastructure and this convergence that we alluded to and talked about earlier on in the call? Now, if you have the ability to answer some of these questions, that's fantastic. But one thing I can assure you, there is no single energy company out there that has the skill set to answer all of these questions. And that's why we exist. We're here to provide the advisory services, the consultancy services, all of the professional services that help you assess your security posture, and the technical expertise that make the recommendations of how to secure your digital infrastructure and your convergence journey going forward. Now, for many other organizations, and potentially oil and gas and other industrial control systems, transportation systems, etc., it's kind of a same journey, to be honest with you. However, it differs in the systems, it differs in the policies. And one thing I'd like to touch on here is you might come back and say, well, okay, I'm the chief information officer, the chief security officer of this energy company, and I've already gone through my compliance checklist of ISO, of ICS, of multiple other compliance standards that are required of me to do one every year or twice a year or something like that. What we say to this is most of these standards, by the time they become standards, most of those are outdated. We're not saying they're bad. They deliver a certain snapshot of your understanding of whether you are compliant within certain policies, certain regulatory framework, potentially some laws in some countries, and industrial best practices, which is good, but it's not good enough, because the digital convergence that is taking place today has no standard way to assess its state of breach, the level of vulnerability, whether it's been hacked or not. And you need to bring in the expertise to go through and assess where you are and provide the recommendations and implement those recommendations for you.
Okay, so let me ask this question, because we have listeners from developing nations to first world nations, and so we're all going through this period, and some in the developing nations will kind of go through it quicker than we've gone through here in the States, where everything is becoming interconnected. And even in your house, you can talk about linking the apps up from your cell phone to your thermostat to your garage door. And I can only imagine when we look at larger companies, this interconnectivity in the infrastructure system is going to be critical in the future. What are you guys seeing as far as, hey, this is some vulnerability for cyber attacks, and where can you come in and kind of plug that gap?
Right. So there's definitely vulnerability, because let me just, in a very simple terms, explain to you what happens. So if I'm a research student in computer department in a university, or if I've been working in the industry and I've got an idea, the idea is to build this really smart thermostat, or a smart lock for the front door, or I build a smart light and, get crowdfunding for it. And this is fantastic. So, I'm a small firm, I'm a startup, etc. I will not spend the energy, nor the time, nor the investment in building all the security measures around my smart thermostat, or smart lock, or smart light. I just want to deliver my product to the market in the fastest possible way. And I'm sure a lot of people will say, oh, no, we take all the measures and so on. But this is a reality, folks, today. Most Internet of Things firms, most vendors of connected sensors, most vendors that are providing this digital infrastructure are thinking of security, if they are thinking of it, at the end of their research and development journey, at the end of their product roadmap cycle. They're not thinking of it at the beginning. And this is where we come and we sit down with the clients and we say, okay, so you're gaining and harnessing the benefits out of digitizing your grid, out of digitizing your transportation control system, out of digitizing your oil and gas production and delivery mechanisms and all the industrial systems that you have, which is fantastic. But what you need to do now is get some expertise to come and assess what you need to do in that space. So how do you secure it? Now that you've adopted it, you've implemented it, you've leveraged and harnessed the value from it, how do you actually go about and secure it? And there's no one answer to all problems. There's no single solution for this. And that's why you need to work with a multidisciplined security organization that's got diverse expertise. You can't just go to a firm that is focused on firewall technologies and say, come and help me with this. You can't go and, talk to a end user and application level security firm and say, come and help me with this. You need thought leaders with a tremendous amount of R&D capability and expertise, and you need a multidisciplined security organization that can come and do the strategy for you from a cybersecurity perspective, all the way to the delivery and configuration and implementation of your systems and tools.
Okay, well, that's really good stuff there. What trends can we see in the future when we think of cyber threats to the energy industry? If we're looking at 5 years, 10 years down the road, what are you guys projecting that are going to be the threats of the future?
Well, we're going to be seeing a lot more elaborate and complex attacks taking place in the future. I predict that we will see, similar to what we've seen in the denial of service attack recently, leveraging CCTV cameras on the East Coast of the U.S. We predict that we will see similar attacks within energy companies, whether it's in a smart grid or a oil and gas company, where the connected sensors and the connected devices are leveraged to launch an attack and cause a breach. We also predict that the ransomware attacks that have been taking place will be a lot more sizable and a lot more complex. I just recently was talking to a client who has had some of his storage devices locked up and encrypted through an exercise of ransomware. Now, fortunately, those storage systems were not part of his critical systems. But imagine if those were part of the critical systems and they've been locked, and the hackers are asking you for ransom to unlock and decrypt those systems. So we'll see a lot more ransomware. We will also witness a type of attack on large national grids that will not be for the purpose of fame and notoriety, just like what we've seen in the past in some cases, nor ransomware and gaining economic and financial benefits, but we will see a lot more state-sponsored attacks on these organizations. And we just want to make sure we alert these organizations about the fact that you're facing a lot of threats out there. The malicious actors can come in so many shapes and forms, and they can come from either an individual sitting in the basement of his grandmother's house all the way to a state actor that's pouring millions and millions of dollars behind orchestrating an attack. And we will definitely witness the beginning of really elaborate compute systems that leverage automation and artificial intelligence and machine learning to launch an attack. In the past, a lot of the attacks have been designed and orchestrated by humans, usually software engineers. In the future, we will start seeing bots and artificial intelligence machines leveraging machine-to-machine learning and artificial intelligence to orchestrate and to potentially create an attack and launch it. And I want to leave the audience with one thing before we end this podcast. Don't lose hope, and definitely don't give up on your journey towards digitization. If you do that, you will be left behind, and your company will have no chance of succeeding. There's no question about the fact that digitizing your processes, digitizing your system, digitizing your infrastructure is a key differentiator and competitive edge for you. You should do that, but at the same time, you should do it with an advisor, trusted, who's able to guide you and help you navigate of how to secure and build a resilient infrastructure as you go forward. And thank you very much, Ryan, and all the listeners today.
Yeah, thank you. And before we let you go, we're going to link to your website and your company's Twitter handle, but is there anything else that you want to plug or promote about yourself or DarkMatter, maybe where the audience could reach you personally, or a presentation that you're giving soon or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end, I just want to ask everybody if they have some time and if they felt that this podcast was valuable, if they want to reach out, they can go to darkmatter.ae, and that's darkmatter, one word, .ae. They can reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to have a conversation with them. We focus on an end-to-end security solutions that includes both services and products. And we are working on some really interesting next-generation security systems, both on the services and the product side. And we'll be more than happy to spend some time and talk through those in details with our potential clients. So in addition to what I already said around the products and services that we're working on and the portfolio of what we offer, I'd like to invite everybody to come and visit us in the RSA event in San Francisco in about a month from now. And right after that, Mobile World Congress at the end of February, beginning of March in Barcelona. So if you are in those two events, we would be more than happy to see you there.
Well, that's all very exciting. And thank you so much for coming on. This was very helpful for me and the audience, I know. And we look forward to talking to you guys again in the future. And best of luck to you, Rabih.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Take care.
Thanks again, Rabih, for coming on and dealing with all that went on during this podcast recording. You are a true professional, and we really appreciate it. Setting this interview up on DarkMatter's end was really a team effort. So Tawanda and Will and Kevin and everyone else who was involved on your guys' end, thank you so much. And guys, they are very easy to deal with and get in touch with and very quick communicators. So please reach out to DarkMatter if you have questions, comments about the show, about what they do. They're very good people to deal with, and I recommend them highly. Now, a couple more things before we go. This month's giveaway, The Frackers by Gregory Zuckerman. He's actually scheduled to come on the show, so we're hoping to get that pinned down and to have him on really soon, actually. And so stay tuned for that. And but his book, that is the book giveaway for this month. So all you have to do is, you should know it by now, is rate and review in iTunes. That's got to be a written review. If you do that, you are eligible to win. And so take 2 minutes, if you don't mind, and do it. And a final note to our UAE listeners, we really appreciate you guys, and we hope that having someone on from the UAE was helpful for you guys. And if you have some other folks down there, you say, hey, this is some other companies that would be good to come on the show, email me, globalenergyleaders@gmail.com, or Twitter @RyanRaySenior. And a couple other quick announcements. We're working on some other shows, and so we're working on a handful, really. And so we hope to get those out. Some of them will be weekly, some of them will be monthly, some of them will be energy, some will be oil and gas, kind of a variety of shows that we have in the hopper working on. And so we're excited about that as well. Guys, we love that you listen to us. It is awesome that you take a few minutes of your day or week to listen to us ramble on about these things. We hope that you're getting value, and we appreciate you. Until next time, keep climbing.
Thanks for listening to the Global Energy Leaders podcast, powered by R Squared Global.